3 weeks passed. Ethan ran 2 more cargo jobs, one to a mining colony on the edge of Safari space, and another to a human outpost that needed medical supplies. The work was the same as always. Load, fly, deliver, collect payment, repeat. His hands stayed busy. His mind did not. He kept thinking about the nebula. Not the danger of it, but the moment after, when Liara had leaned back in the co-pilot seat and almost smiled, and the cockpit had felt like a place where 2 people belonged instead of 1. He kept thinking about Naya sitting on the floor, watching them, and saying those words that had no right to hit as hard as they did. You would make a good father, because you stay calm when things break. Ethan told himself it was nothing. Children said things like that. They did not understand what the words meant. He told himself this every night for 3 weeks, and every night he believed it a little less. On the 23rd day, his communication console lit up with an incoming message routed through the Concorde's civilian network. The sender identification was scrambled, but the message header read simply, "For Captain Ethan Cole, from a friend." He opened it. A small holographic image appeared above the console. It was Naya. She was sitting cross-legged on what looked like a bed in a diplomatic residence. Her silver-streaked hair was messy, and she was wearing pajamas with small stars printed on them. She looked directly into the recording device with a kind of seriousness that most adults could not manage. "Hello, Captain Ethan," she said. "I hope you are okay. I hope your shit is okay too. I am sending you this message because I have been thinking a lot since we left your ship, and I decided I should tell you what I am thinking because my mother says that keeping important things inside makes them heavier." She paused and took a breath. "My father died before I was born. He was a security officer on a border station, and there was a fight, and the Concorde did not send help in time. My mother does not talk about him very much, but sometimes at night, when she thinks I am asleep, I hear her talking to his picture. She tells him she is tired. She tells him she misses him. She tells him she is sorry she could not keep him safe." Naya's voice did not shake. She spoke the way someone speaks when they have thought about something for a long time and have decided to be brave about it. "I have been reading about humans," she continued. "I read that humans are the only species in the galaxy that will adopt children that are not their own and love them the same as if they were. I read that humans will cross entire star systems to get back to the people they care about. I read that when a human loves someone, they do not stop, even when it is hard, even when it hurts." She leaned closer to the recording device. "Captain Ethan, my mother needs someone. She will not say it, because she is strong, and she thinks asking for help is the same as being weak. But she is wrong, and I need a father. I have never had one, and I would like to know what it is like. You were kind to me. You were calm when the ship was breaking. You looked at my mother like she was something important, not just something useful." She sat back and folded her hands in her lap. "So I am asking you, will you please marry my mother and be my father? I know this is a big question, but I had to ask because nobody else was going to, and I am tired of waiting for the adults to figure it out." The message ended. The hologram flickered and went dark. Ethan sat in his cockpit for a long time without moving. The stars outside the viewport drifted slowly. The only sound was the low hum of the Stardrift's life support system. He played the message again, then a third time. He did not cry, but something inside his chest that had been locked tight for 3 years shifted, like a door being pushed open by a wind too gentle to resist. He needed to talk to someone. He opened a secure channel to Admiral Grace Whitfield, a woman he had known since his early days flying supply routes for the Frontier Fleet. Grace was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, silver-haired, and had a voice that could command a battle group or comfort a grieving friend with equal skill. She answered on the second signal. You only call me when something is either broken or strange. Which is it? Strange, Ethan said. He told her everything. The contract, the nebula, Liara, Naya, the message. Grace listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "So a child who has never had a father looked at you and decided you were worth asking. And you are calling me to figure out if that means something. I am calling you because I do not trust my own judgment right now." "Your judgment is fine, Ethan. Your courage is what needs work." She leaned forward in her chair. "I have watched you run from your own life for 3 years. You are a good man who is very good at pretending he doesn't need anyone. That little girl saw through you in 5 minutes. Maybe you should listen to her." Ethan said nothing. "I am not telling you to propose to a woman you barely know. I am telling you to stop flying in circles and go find out if there is something worth landing for." Meanwhile, on Velhari Prime, the peace summit was not going well. The Concord Assembly had gathered representatives from over 40 species to discuss the future of galactic governance. And the central issue was humanity. In the 12 years since humans had joined the galactic community, they had expanded faster than any species in recorded history. They built colonies, trade routes, and alliances with a speed that impressed some and terrified others. Councillor Draven Tal, of the Safari delegation, stood at the center of the opposition. He was a tall, scaled figure with cold green eyes and a voice that carried authority like a weapon. Tal believed that humans were too emotional, too unpredictable, and too ambitious to be trusted with real power in the Concord. He had spent months building a coalition of species who shared his concerns. Liara Velshan stood against him. As a cultural liaison, her role was to bridge the gap between species, and she had spent years arguing that humanity's emotional depth was not a weakness, but a strength. She spoke in the assembly about how humans processed grief, how they formed bonds across species lines, how their capacity for empathy allowed them to understand perspectives that more logic-driven species could not. Tal dismissed her arguments publicly. In private, he was more dangerous. He began spreading quiet suggestions that Liara's sympathy for humans was not professional, but personal. He did not name Ethan. He did not need to. The implication was enough. Liara felt the shift in how other delegates looked at her. The warmth left their eyes. The invitations to private discussions stopped coming. She was being isolated, and she knew who was doing it. It was during one of these difficult evenings that she discovered what her daughter had done. Naya had left her datapad open on the table, and the sent messages folder showed the recording to Ethan. Liara watched it. She sat down slowly, pressed her hand over her mouth, and closed her eyes. She was not angry. She was something worse. She was moved, and she was ashamed. Moved because her daughter had the courage to ask for what she herself wanted, but could never say. And ashamed because she had been so focused on being strong that she had not seen how much Naya was carrying. She sent Ethan a message that night. It was short and formal. She apologized for her daughter's behavior. She explained that Naya sometimes acted on her feelings without thinking. She assured him that he was under no obligation to respond, and that she hoped the message had not caused him discomfort. Ethan replied within the hour. His message was also short, but it was not formal. "Liara," he wrote, "you have nothing to apologize for. Your daughter is not reckless. She is brave. She said what she felt, clearly and without fear. And that is the most human thing I have ever seen anyone do, even though she is not human. Please do not tell her she was wrong. She was not." He paused, then added one more line. "And for what it is worth, I have not stopped thinking about that nebula either." Liara read the message twice. She did not reply right away, but she did not delete it. She saved it in a folder she had not used in years, the one she had once kept her husband's letters in. Over the following days, they began to write to each other. The messages were small at first. Ethan told her about a supply run to a colony, where the children had painted a mural on the landing pad. Liara told him about a delegate who had never seen rain and was fascinated by the concept. He described the sound the star drift made when it dropped out of faster-than-light travel. A low hum that he found comforting. She described the gardens on Velhari Prime, where the flowers bloomed in colors humans could not see, but she tried to describe for him anyway. They did not talk about Naya's question. They did not talk about the future. But every message was a small step closer to something neither of them was willing to name yet, because naming it would make it real, and real things can be lost. Naya noticed the change in her mother. Liara smiled more at meals. She hummed while reviewing documents. Once, Naya caught her laughing quietly at her datapad and asked what was funny. Liara said, "Just a message from a friend." Naya did not push. She did not need to. She was 8 years old, and she already understood that some things grow best when you stop watching them and just let them be. Ethan found a reason to go back to Velhari Prime. It was not a difficult thing to arrange. The summit needed supplies, food shipments, technical equipment, communication relays, and the Concorde's logistics board was happy to contract a reliable human pilot for the run. Ethan told himself it was just work. He almost believed it. When the Star Drift docked at Velhari Prime's orbital port, the first thing he noticed was the tension. The station corridors, which had been busy but calm during his last visit, now felt tight and watchful. Delegates moved in small groups, speaking in low voices. Security had been doubled at every checkpoint. Something was wrong. He found Liara in the diplomatic wing. She was standing outside a conference room, her arms folded across her chest, her face carrying the kind of stillness that means someone is holding back a storm. Naya was beside her, sitting on a bench with her knees pulled up, reading something on a datapad, but clearly listening to everything around her. Naya saw him first. Her face lit up, and she jumped off the bench and ran to him. She did not say anything clever or bold this time. She just grabbed his hand and held it. Ethan looked down at her, then up at Liara. "What happened?" he asked. Liara told him. Counselor Draven Tal had made his move. That morning, he had presented the Concorde Assembly with a set of classified documents that appeared to show human military vessels operating in restricted space beyond their authorized zones. The documents included sensor logs, communication fragments, and navigational data that painted a picture of deliberate human expansion into territory belonging to 3 non-aligned species. The assembly had erupted. Delegates who had been neutral or cautiously supportive of humanity shifted overnight. Emergency sessions were called. Proposals to freeze human trade agreements and restrict human travel were put on the table within hours. "The documents are fabricated," Liara said. "I am certain of it. The communication patterns do not match standard human military protocols, and the sensor data has compression artifacts that suggest it was assembled from multiple unrelated sources. But Tal presented it with enough conviction to make the moderates afraid. And afraid delegates do not ask careful questions." "Can you prove they are fake?" Ethan asked. "Not yet. And that is the problem. Tal does not need the documents to be real. He just needs them to be believable long enough to shift the vote. If the Assembly passes the restriction proposals before anyone can disprove the evidence, the damage will be done. Human-alien relations will be set back a generation." She paused. Her voice dropped. "And he has made it personal." In his address to the Assembly, he suggested that certain members of the diplomatic corps have allowed personal relationships with humans to compromise their judgment. He did not say my name. He did not need to. Ethan felt something hot and sharp rise in his chest. It was anger, but not the loud kind. It was the quiet kind. The kind that comes when someone hurts a person you care about and hides behind procedure while doing it. "What do you need?" he asked. "Time," Liara said. "Time and someone who can stand in front of that assembly and remind them what they are about to throw away." Ethan had never spoken to a political body in his life. He was a cargo pilot. He fixed engines and hauled supplies, and slept in a cockpit that smelled like recycled air. But he looked at Liara, and he looked at Naya still holding his hand, and he thought about every message they had exchanged, every small truth they had shared across the distance between stars. "I will do it," he said. Liara stared at him. "Ethan, the assembly does not grant speaking time to civilians. There are protocols, approvals, security reviews. Let me worry about that." He contacted Admiral Grace Whitfield on a priority channel. Grace listened to the situation and was quiet for 10 seconds, which was a long time for a woman who made decisions that moved warships. "I can get you a civilian advisory slot," she said. "It is meant for trade representatives, but the language is broad enough. You will have 15 minutes, Ethan. That is all I can get you." 15 minutes is enough," Ethan said. The next day, Ethan Cole stood in the Concord Assembly Hall. It was a vast, circular chamber with tiered seating that rose on all sides like the inside of a bowl. Hundreds of delegates from dozens of species looked down at him. Some were curious. Some were hostile. Tal sat in the Sithari section, his scaled face unreadable, his green eyes fixed on Ethan like a predator watching something it did not yet consider a threat. Ethan had not prepared a speech. He had tried the night before, sitting in his cockpit with a blank datapad, but every formal sentence he wrote felt wrong. So he put the datapad away and decided to do the only thing he knew how to do well. He told the truth. "My name is Ethan Cole," he said. "I am not a diplomat. I am not a soldier. I fly a freight ship called the Stardrift, and I haul supplies to colonies and stations across the Outer Rim. I am probably the least important person who has ever stood in this room." A few delegates shifted in their seats. Tal's expression did not change. "I am here because someone I care about is being attacked for believing that humans deserve a place in this galaxy, and I could not sit on my ship and do nothing about it. I know that is not how politics works. I know I am supposed to present data and arguments and carefully worded proposals. I do not have any of those things. What I have is a story." He took a breath. 3 years ago I lost my wife and my unborn child when pirates raided a colony I was supposed to be protecting. I was 2 systems away, hauling cargo, doing my job. By the time I got back there was nothing left. I spent the next 3 years alone, flying from one end of the galaxy to the other, because moving was easier than feeling. The chamber was silent. A few weeks ago, I was hired to transport a diplomat and her daughter to this summit. During the trip, our ship hit a nebula, and the engine started failing. The diplomat, and a lorry woman who I had barely spoken to, came into my cockpit, sat down, and helped me save the ship. She did not hesitate. She did not ask for anything. She just helped. He paused. Her daughter was watching from the doorway. When it was over, she looked at me and said I would make a good father because I stay calm when things break. She was 8 years old. She had never met a human before, and she saw something in me that I had stopped seeing in myself. He looked around the chamber. Some delegates were leaning forward. Others were very still. "I am not here to tell you that humans are perfect. We are not. We are loud and stubborn, and we do not always think before we act. But I will tell you what we are. We are people who carry our grief and keep going. We are people who will cross a galaxy to help someone who helped us. We are people, when a child asks us a question we are not ready for, do not turn away. We sit with it, we carry it, and eventually, we answer." His voice was steady, but his hands were not. He pressed them flat against his sides. "Counselor Tal wants you to believe that humans are a threat. Maybe some of us are. But the human standing in front of you right now is a man who lost everything, and was found again by an 8-year-old girl who decided she wanted a father, and was brave enough to ask a stranger. If she can bridge the gap between our species with nothing but honesty, then I think the rest of us can at least try." He stopped. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then slowly, from the upper tiers, a delegate from one of the neutral species began to tap the arm of their chair, the galactic equivalent of applause. Others joined. Not all, not even most, but enough. Tall's expression did not change, but his hands tightened on the edge of his desk. The speech did not end the crisis. The restriction proposals were not withdrawn. But 3 delegations that had been leaning toward Tall's coalition announced they would delay their votes pending further review of the evidence. The momentum shifted, just slightly, like a ship adjusting its heading by a single degree. Barely noticeable in the moment, but enough to change where it ends up. That evening, Ethan sat alone on an observation deck, overlooking Velhari Prime's rings. The planet turned slowly below, bands of gold and violet light reflecting off the ice in the rings. He was tired, in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. He heard small footsteps behind him. Naya appeared and sat down next to him without asking permission. She leaned against his arm, the way a child leans against a parent, with complete trust, like it had never occurred to her that he might move away. "I heard what you said in there," she told him. "My mother was crying. She does not cry very often." "I hope they were good tears," Ethan said. "She said they were the kind of tears you cry when someone says something you needed to hear." Naya looked up at him. "Did you mean it? Everything you said? Every word? Does that mean you are going to stay?" Ethan looked down at her. Her amber eyes were steady and serious, and full of a hope that she was trying very hard not to show, because she had already learned, at 8 years old, that hope can hurt if you hold it too tightly. "I am thinking about it," he said. Naya nodded slowly. She leaned her head against his arm again, and looked out at the rings. "Think faster," she said quietly. Ethan almost laughed. He put his arm around her shoulder, and they sat there together, watching the planet turn, saying nothing, needing nothing. 2 people who had both been looking for something and were only just beginning to understand that they had found it. Draven Tall was not a man who accepted small defeats. He had spent 2 decades building his influence inside the Concorde, and he had not done it by backing down when one human freight pilot gave a pretty speech. The delay in voting was a setback, not a failure. It meant he needed to push harder, faster, and with a hand that could not be traced back to him. Within 3 days of Ethan's address to the Assembly, a Concorde supply convoy was attacked in the Marin Corridor, a stretch of space that connected several non-aligned systems. 2 cargo ships were destroyed. A 3rd was crippled. The attackers used weapons and tactics consistent with human military forces. They left behind debris with human manufacturing signatures. They broadcast on human military frequencies during the assault. When the news hit the assembly floor, the effect was immediate and devastating. The 3 delegations that had delayed their votes reversed their positions within hours. Emergency security protocols were activated. Human diplomats and trade representatives across the Concorde were summoned for questioning. Calls for a full embargo on human travel and trade echoed through every corridor of the station. Liara was the first casualty. The Concorde's internal security division suspended her diplomatic credentials pending a formal investigation into her associations with human operatives. It was a polite way of saying they no longer trusted her. She was escorted from her office by 2 security officers and told to remain in her quarters until further notice. When Ethan heard what happened, he went to her quarters. The door was open. Liara was sitting at the table, her datapad dark in front of her, her hands resting flat on the surface, like she was holding herself in place. Naya was in the next room, and Ethan could hear the soft sound of the girl trying very hard not to cry. Tal did this, Liara said. Her voice was even, but her eyes burned. The attack was staged. The evidence is planted. This is exactly what he did with the documents. Create a crisis, control the reaction, and cut the ground out from under anyone who disagrees. Can you prove it? Ethan asked. It was the same question he had asked before, and they both knew the answer had not changed. Not from inside this room. The communication logs from the attack are sealed by Concord security. If I could access the Sithari internal channels, I could trace the orders. But I have no credentials, no access, and no authority. She looked at him. Ethan, I am asking you not to do what I think you are about to do. I have not said anything yet. You do not have to. I have read enough about humans to know what happens when someone they care about is in trouble. You get a look on your face, like you are calculating how many rules you are willing to break. And the answer is always all of them. Ethan sat down across from her. Liara, if Tal wins this, it is not just about you. Every human in the Concord will be treated as a threat. Colonies will lose trade access, people will go hungry, families will be separated. I have seen what happens when people in power decide an entire species does not belong somewhere. I will not watch it happen again. Liara was quiet for a long time. Then she said, There is a man named Danny Greer. He is human, a former cargo pilot like you, but he fell into mercenary work about 5 years ago. He runs with a crew that takes contracts from anyone who pays. If Tal hired a group to stage the attack, Danny's network would know about it. How do you know about Danny Greer? Because the Concord Intelligence Service tried to recruit me once, and I said no, but I kept the contacts. She reached under the table and pulled out a small data chip. This has his last known coordinates. He operates out of an asteroid belt in the HeHFY system, about 2 jumps from here. Ethan took the chip. Their fingers touched briefly. Liara did not pull her hand away. Come back, she said. It was not a request. It was not a demand. It was the kind of thing you say to someone when you have finally admitted, at least to yourself, that you cannot stand the idea of them not coming back. I will, Ethan said. He left that night. The Stardrift launched from the orbital port under a civilian supply contract that Grace Whitfield had arranged on short notice. It was a thin cover, but it only needed to hold long enough for Ethan to reach the HeHFY system. Ethan flew carefully, using the Stardrift sensors to track faint energy signatures, a parked ship here, a communication relay there, the ghost traces of people who did not want to be found. He found Danny Greer's base on the 3rd day. It was built into the hollowed core of a large asteroid, invisible from the outside except for a single docking port that only opened when it recognized a friendly signal. Ethan did not have a friendly signal. What he had was a cargo hold full of medical supplies and a communications channel. He hailed the base on an open frequency. This is Captain Ethan Cole of the Stardrift. I am not military. I am not Concord. I have medical supplies and no weapons charged. I want to talk to Danny Greer. Silence. Then a voice came back, rough and tired. Ethan Cole, the guy who gave the speech. What do you want? I want the truth about the Miran corridor attack. Another silence, longer this time. Dock at Port 3, Danny said. And if you are lying about the weapons, I will know. Danny Greer was not what Ethan expected. He was a lean man in his 40s, with deep lines around his eyes, and hands that were scarred from years of rough work. He met Ethan at the docking port with 2 armed crew members behind him, but his posture was not hostile. It was cautious, the way someone stands when they have been waiting for someone to ask the right question. They sat in a small room, with metal walls and bad lighting. Danny poured 2 cups of something that was probably coffee, but did not taste like it. I know what you're going to ask, Danny said, and the answer is yes. The attack was a setup. My crew was hired to 3 layers of middlemen, but the money came from a Sethari account linked to Tal's political fund. We were told it was a training exercise. Disable some empty cargo ships, leave the right debris, broadcast on the right frequencies. Nobody was supposed to get hurt. People died, Danny. Danny's face tightened. I know. The ships were not supposed to be crewed. That was the deal. But one of the convoy captains changed his schedule last minute. He was on board when we hit. I did not know until after. He set his cup down. I have been sitting in this rock for 2 weeks, trying to figure out what to do about it. I am not a good man, Ethan. But I did not sign up to kill people for a politician's game. Then help me end it, Ethan said. Give me the communications, the payment records, anything that connects Tal to the attack. Danny looked at him for a long time. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a data drive. I started recording everything the day I found out people died, he said. It is all there. Channel logs, transfer receipts, encrypted orders from Tal's office. Enough to bury him. Ethan took the drive. Come with me, he said. Testify in person. It will carry more weight. And spend the rest of my life in a Concord prison? I cannot promise what happens after. But I can promise that if you do this, you will be the human who told the truth when it mattered. That counts for something in this galaxy. Danny closed his eyes. He thought for a long time. Then he nodded. They left the asteroid belt together. Danny flew his own ship alongside the Stardrift. The journey back to Velhari Prime took a day and a half. During that time, Ethan sent a coded message to Grace Whitfield with a summary of what they had found. Grace, in turn, arranged for a Concord security escort to meet them at the orbital port. Halfway to Velhari Prime, 2 unmarked ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and opened fire on the Stardrift. The attack was fast and precise, aimed at the engines, meant to cripple rather than destroy. Tal did not want Ethan dead. He wanted the data drive to never reach the assembly. The Stardrift took a hit to the port engine. Alarms filled the cockpit. Ethan fought the controls while Danny's ship moved to intercept, drawing fire away from the Stardrift. The battle lasted 11 minutes. Danny was the better combat pilot, and he disabled one of the attackers with a shot to its navigation array. The second attacker retreated when the Concorde security escort arrived on long-range sensors. Ethan brought the Stardrift into Velhari Prime's orbital port, trailing smoke and sparks. The port engine was dead. Half the hull sensors were gone, but the data drive was safe. The evidence was presented to the Concorde Assembly within 6 hours. Danny Greer testified in person, his voice steady, his account detailed, his remorse visible. The communication logs, payment records, and encrypted orders were verified by 3 independent technical teams. Draven Tal was removed from his position. The Sethari government, faced with undeniable proof, issued a formal statement condemning his actions and pledging cooperation with the Concorde's investigation. Tal himself was taken into custody, his cold green eyes fixed on Ethan as the security officers led him away. He said nothing. He did not need to. The look was enough. Liara's credentials were restored. More than restored, the Concorde Assembly, in a rare unanimous motion, elevated her to a senior advisory role for interspecies relations, recognizing her as one of the key figures who had held the coalition together during the crisis. When Ethan found her after the vote, he was bruised, burned in 2 places, and had not slept in 40 hours. He was still wearing the same clothes he had worn in the asteroid belt. He smelled like engine coolant and recycled air. Liara did not shake his hand. She did not nod formally. She did not thank him with diplomatic words. She walked up to him, took his face in both her hands, and looked at him with those amber eyes that had been guarded the first time they met, and were not guarded anymore. She said something in her own language, soft and slow, the kind of words you only say once in a lifetime, because they mean too much to repeat. Ethan did not understand the words, but he understood her. "You are welcome," he said quietly. From down the corridor, watching through a half-open door, Naya Velshan smiled so wide it hurt her face, and she hugged her datapad to her chest like it was the most precious thing in the world. The months that followed were the quietest of Ethan Cole's life, and for the first time, quiet did not feel like emptiness. It felt like rest. The Concord entered a new season, with Tal gone and the truth about the Marin Corridor attack public. The political winds shifted. Fear did not vanish overnight. It never does, but it loosened its grip enough for reason to breathe. New committees were formed. Joint trade agreements were drafted. For the first time, human representatives were invited to sit on the Concord's Central Planning Council, not as guests, but as members. Liara was at the center of it. Her new advisory role put her in the room where every major decision was made, and she earned every seat she sat in. She argued for policies that built bridges instead of walls. She pushed for exchange programs that sent young people from one species to live and study among another. She spoke about empathy not as a weakness, but as a technology, a tool that allowed different minds to build something none of them could build alone. She was good at her work. She had always been good. But something had changed in the way she carried herself. The weight that had bent her shoulders for years had not disappeared, but it had shifted, like she was no longer carrying it alone. Ethan had stayed on Velhari Prime. He told himself at first that it was practical. The star drift needed extensive repairs after the battle, and the orbital port had the best facilities in the sector. The logistics board offered him a contract to coordinate supply chains for the new joint trade initiative, and the work was steady and paid well. They were also not the real reason. The real reason was that every evening, when the work was done, he walked through the corridors of the diplomatic residence to a door that opened before he reached it, because Naya had been watching for him through the window. He fell into their life the way water falls into a riverbed, naturally, as if the shape had been waiting for him. He cooked dinner when Liara worked late, using recipes from Earth that he adapted with whatever ingredients the station market carried. The results were not always good. Once he made something that was supposed to be pasta, but turned out closer to glue, and Naya laughed so hard she fell off her chair. He ate it anyway, because waste was waste, and Naya declared that she loved him for it. She had a collection of stories from 6 different species, and she made him read them all, including the Sathari ones, which were long and full of political lessons that put him to sleep faster than they put her. She would poke him awake and say, "You are the worst at this," and he would say, "Read it yourself then," and she would say, "No, I like your voice. Keep going." He argued with Liara about politics over meals. Not loudly, not angrily, but with the kind of honest disagreement that comes when two people respect each other enough to say what they think. He believed the Concorde moved too slowly. She believed it moved at the only speed trust allows. They went back and forth, and sometimes she convinced him, and sometimes he convinced her, and sometimes they just agreed to disagree and shared a pot of tea that he brewed too strong, and she drank anyway. He fixed things around their quarters. The door sensor that clicked twice before opening. The light panel in the hallway that flickered at night. The water recycler that made a humming sound Liara did not notice, but drove Ethan slowly mad. He spent a whole afternoon on his back, under the kitchen unit, replacing a valve that was not broken. And when Liara asked him what he was doing, he said, "Maintenance." And she smiled, because they both knew he just needed something to do with his hands. He was happy. It crept up on him so slowly, he did not notice at first. Happiness, after years of grief, does not arrive with music and lights. It arrives like morning, a little warmer each day, a little brighter, until you look up and realize the dark is gone, and you cannot remember exactly when it left. One evening, Naya told them both to come to the observation deck. She was very specific about the time, and very serious about the request, which meant she was planning something. Ethan and Liara exchanged a look, the kind of look that parents share when their child is clearly up to something, and they have decided to let it play out. The observation deck was the same one where Ethan and Naya had sat together months ago, the night after his speech to the assembly. The rings of Velhari Prime glowed below, bands of gold and violet turning slowly in the dark. The stars beyond were thick and bright, a sky full of light that stretched in every direction without end. Naya was standing in the center of the deck. She had dressed up, not formally, but in a way that showed she considered this occasion important. Her silver-streaked hair was brushed smooth. She was holding a small piece of paper in both hands, the kind of real physical paper that was rare on space stations, and therefore precious. "Sit down, please," she said to them. She pointed to a bench. They sat. She had written on it in 2 languages, her mother's language and English, switching back and forth between them with the ease of a child who had grown up between 2 worlds. She began to read. "Family is not about what species you are. It is not about what color your skin is, or what language you dream in, or how many hearts beat inside your chest. Family is about choosing to stay when you could leave. It is about sitting next to someone when the ship is breaking and not running away. It is about learning someone's language because you want to understand them, not because you have to. It is about cooking bad pasta and eating it anyway." Ethan felt something tighten in his throat. Beside him, Liara's hand found his and held it. "My father died before I was born," Naya continued. "I never knew him. But my mother told me he was brave and kind, and I believe her. I do not think he would be angry that we found someone new. I think he would say that love is not something you run out of. It is something that grows when you share it." She looked up from the paper. Her amber eyes were bright with tears she was not trying to hide. "Captain Ethan Cole," she said, "I asked you a question a long time ago in a message I sent from my pajamas. I am asking you again now, and this time I am dressed nicer, so please take me seriously." A sound came out of Ethan that was half laugh and half something else entirely. "Will you please stay? Not as a guest, not as a friend. Will you be my father? Will you marry my mother and help us? Not because we are weak, but because we are better when you are here, and I think you are better when you are with us." She folded the paper carefully and held it against her chest. He looked at Liara, who had tears running down her face and was not wiping them away, who was looking at him with an expression that contained every word she had ever been too careful to say. He got off the bench and knelt down so he was at Naya's level, the same way he had knelt the very first time they met, in the cargo bay of the Stardrift, when she had asked him 100 questions and he had answered every one. "Naya," he said, "you never needed to ask more than once. I was just slow." She threw her arms around his neck and held on like the universe depended on it. Ethan stood, still holding her, and turned to Liara. He had been learning her language in secret for weeks, practicing alone in his cockpit, late at night, stumbling over sounds that human mouths were not designed to make. He was not good at it. His pronunciation was terrible, but the words were the right ones. In a lorry, haltingly but with everything he had, he said, "Will you let me stay? Not as a guest, as family." Liara stood. She stepped forward. She put her hand on his face, the way she had done the day he came back from the asteroid belt, battered and burned and still standing. "Yes," she said, in English, because she wanted him to hear it in his own language. "Yes." Naya, still hanging from Ethan's neck, said, "Finally," and the word carried so much relief that all 3 of them laughed, and the laughter echoed off the glass of the observation deck and mixed with the light of the stars. They stood together for a long time, Naya between them, holding both their hands, looking out at the galaxy that stretched before them, vast and dangerous and full of things they did not yet understand. But they would face it together. That was the point. That had always been the point. I think the galaxy is going to be fine now, Naya said quietly, because it has us. Far away, on a command ship stationed at the edge of human space, Admiral Grace Whitfield was reviewing fleet reports when a personal message arrived on her private channel. It was from Ethan. It was short. It said, "She said yes, both of them." Grace leaned back in her chair. She closed her eyes for a moment. Then she opened her personal log, a file she had kept for 30 years, recording the moments she believed mattered most, and she added a new entry. Today I was reminded of something I have always known, but too often forget. Humanity's greatest weapon has never been its ships. It has never been its soldiers, or its technology, or its stubborn refusal to die. Humanity's greatest weapon is its stubborn, reckless, magnificent capacity to love. A cargo pilot, and a diplomat, and a child who was braver than all of us. They reminded the galaxy of that today. And I think the galaxy is better for it. She poured herself a drink. And she smiled, alone on her bridge, looking out at the same stars that Ethan and Liara and Naya were watching from 1,000 light years away. The same stars, the same sky, the same galaxy. But a little warmer now, a little brighter, a little more like home. Ethan Cole had not slept well in 3 years. It was not because of the hum of his ship or the emptiness of deep space. It was because every time he closed his eyes, he saw the colony burning. He saw the smoke rising from the settlement on Haven 4, the place where his wife had been waiting for him, the place where his child would have been born. Pirates had hit the colony while he was hauling cargo 2 systems away. By the time he got back, there was nothing left but ash and silence. So Ethan did what humans do when the pain is too heavy to carry standing still. He kept moving. He flew his freight ship, the Stardrift, from one end of the outer rim to the other. He picked up contracts, delivered supplies, fixed his engines, and talked to no one more than he had to. People in the trade ports called him reliable. They called him honest. They never called him happy, because he was not. He was 34 years old and felt like 60. The contract that changed everything came through the Galactic Concord's Civilian Logistics Board. It was a simple job on paper. Transport a diplomatic envoy from Aethys 9 Station to the neutral world of Valhari Prime for a peace summit. The pay was decent. The timeline was tight. Ethan accepted it without reading the details because he needed the fuel credits and did not care who his passengers were. He cared when they walked on board. Liara Velshan was Aloy, tall, slender, with pale violet skin and hair streaked with silver that caught the light like metal thread. She moved with the careful grace of someone who had spent her life choosing every word and every step. Her eyes were a deep amber color, warm but guarded, like a fire burning behind glass. She carried a single travel case and a datapad, and introduced herself with a formal nod that told Ethan she was used to people keeping their distance from her. Behind her came a child. Naya Velshan was 8 years old and had none of her mother's caution. She walked onto the Stardrift like she owned it. She looked up at the cargo bay ceiling, then at the loading arms, then at the navigation console visible through the open cockpit door, and her amber eyes, the same shade as her mother's, went wide with excitement. She turned to Ethan before he could even say hello. "Is this your whole ship?" she asked. "Do you fly it alone? Why is it so big if you are only one person? Do you get scared at night?" "My mother says space is not scary, but I think she says that so I will not worry." Ethan blinked. Liara closed her eyes briefly, the way a parent does when their child has just said every honest thing they were thinking in the first 5 seconds of meeting a stranger. "Naya," Liara said gently, "let the captain breathe." "It is fine," Ethan said, and he meant it, which surprised him. He knelt down so he was at Naya's level. Yes, it is my whole ship. Yes, I fly it alone. It is big because it carries supplies for colonies. And no, I do not get scared at night. The ship talks to me if something goes wrong. Naya tilted her head. The ship talks? The alarm system, Ethan said. It is very loud and very annoying. Naya laughed. It was a bright, clear sound that bounced off the metal walls of the cargo bay. Ethan had not heard a child laugh in a very long time. The sound hit him somewhere deep, in a place he had spent 3 years trying to wall off. He stood up and showed them to the passenger quarters. They were small, but clean. Liara thanked him politely and began unpacking. Naya sat on the bunk and kicked her legs back and forth, watching Ethan with the kind of open, unblinking attention that only children and cats are capable of. The voyage to Velhari Prime was supposed to take 4 standard days. For the first day, Liara kept to herself, reviewing documents on her datapad and speaking quietly into a comm channel with other diplomats. She was polite to Ethan during meals, but did not offer much conversation. Ethan understood. He was the same way. Naya, however, had no such boundaries. She appeared in the cockpit on the second morning and asked Ethan to explain every single control on the console. He told her what each one did. She asked why humans used physical switches when most galactic ships used thought-linked interfaces. He told her that humans liked to touch things, that there was something in their hands that needed to feel connected to the machine. She thought about this for a long time and then said, I think that is nice. My people trust their minds. Your people trust their hands. Maybe that is why you build so many things. Ethan looked at her. She was 8. She talked like she was 80. On the 3rd day, the trouble came. They hit the edge of a nebula that was not on the updated charts. The Stardrift's navigation sensors began to scramble. The secondary power coupling blew, and the ship lurched hard to starboard. Alarms screamed. Ethan grabbed the manual controls and fought to keep the ship steady while rerouting power from the cargo bay systems to the engines. Liara appeared in the cockpit doorway within seconds. She did not panic. She did not ask what was happening. She looked at the console, assessed the situation, and said, Your coolant pressure is dropping on the port engine. If you reroute from the water recycler, you will have 12 minutes before it overheats. You know engines. I was an engineering student before I became a diplomat, she said. Move over. They worked together for 20 minutes. Liara's hands were steady. Her voice was calm. She called out readings while Ethan made adjustments. Between the two of them, they nursed the Stardrift through the nebula and back into clear space. When it was over, Ethan leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. Thank you, he said. Liara nodded. For the first time, she almost smiled. You stayed calm, she said. Most pilots would have panicked. Panic does not fix engines, Ethan said. From the doorway behind them, Naya spoke. Neither of them had noticed she was there, sitting quietly on the floor, with her arms around her knees, watching the whole thing. You would make a good father, she said, because you stay calm when things break. The words landed in the cockpit, like a stone dropped into still water. Ethan turned to look at the child. Liara turned to look at her daughter, her expression caught between embarrassment and something softer, something she did not want to name. Ethan did not know what to say, so he said, Thank you, Naya. She nodded, satisfied, and went back to her bunk. They arrived at Velhari Prime the next morning. The docking was smooth. Liara gathered their things and thanked Ethan with the same formal politeness she had used when they first met. But something was different now. Her eyes stayed on his a moment longer than they needed to. Naya did not bother with formality. She walked up to Ethan, wrapped her arms around his waist, and hugged him. She held on for 5 full seconds. Ethan stood very still. Then slowly, he put his hand on the top of her head. Goodbye, Captain, Naya said. "Goodbye, Naya," Ethan said. They walked off the ship and into the busy docking terminal. Ethan watched them until they disappeared into the crowd. Then he went back to his cockpit, sat down in his chair, and stared at the empty co-pilot seat where Liara had sat during the nebula. The ship was quiet. It had always been quiet, but for the first time in 3 years, the quiet felt wrong. Ethan ran his hand over the console. He thought about a child who asked too many questions, and a woman who knew how to fix engines, and a laugh that sounded like it belonged in a place he had given up on ever finding. He started the Stardrift's engines. He had another contract waiting. There was always another contract. But as the ship pulled away from Velhari Prime and the stars stretched out ahead of him, Ethan Cole felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt like he was leaving something behind.